This is insane from Juraj Slafkovsky, as we have something to show you that shows that Slav is basically on par with one of the top players in the NHL in terms of his development. We have to dive into just how good he has been as of late. Plus, there's a lot of Jake Allen rumors circulating, some people calling for him to be bought out, sent on waivers, and even some rumors about a potential trade to the Philadelphia Flyers. That plus much more on this episode of Habs Digest. But first things first, Jesse, we got to talk about some of the unfortunate injuries. And, well, after yesterday's game versus St. Louis, a game I was at, wow, what a game I chose to go to. Hey, at least Kovacevic got into a good fight, and Slav got a point. But at the end of the day, we got some injuries, and we now officially know Rafael Harvey-Pinard is going to miss 4 to 6 weeks. Harris is somehow only day-to-day with what looked like a pretty bad concussion. Hopefully he's back sooner than we think, but Cayden Guhle is still being evaluated. But all signs, Jesse, are pointing to maybe Guhle and Harris missing a little bit of time, and that has a lot of Habs fans speculating of who are we going to call up. Is it just going to be Justin Barron with Arber Xhekaj kind of getting his full-time position back? Or could we call up someone like Logan Mailloux, a guy who has 32 points in 45 games and 30 in his last 37? I still think it's Justin Barron, but I'm seeing a lot of talk about Logan Mailloux. Some decisions will have to be made if Harris and Guhle are out for a while. What do you think?
Absolutely. Well, Logan, he's making it tough on management right now because even though he's a little bit younger, right? We're looking at Logan Mailloux, 20 years old, compared to Justin Barron, 22, you would think, okay, for sure, Justin Barron, the older guy, it's a little bit more his time right now, his turn, so to speak, to get that chance with the big clubs. But I mean, like, if for all respective purposes, like Logan Mailloux is outplaying Justin Barron right now. It's amazing to see getting his first 3-point night, in the AHL. So it's really nice to see Logan Mailloux, one of our more interesting, prospects, really playing like a first round pick, right now.
Yeah, he's been amazing. And like, by some accounts of people who've watched a bit of Justin Barron, I've tried my best to watch whatever I could. It's just not much, unfortunately. But from what I gather, Justin Barron has not looked that confident down in Laval either, at least offensively. And we've seen him with a pretty confident offensive game in Montreal, but I don't know if this is necessarily true. I'd love for you guys to correct me if I'm wrong in the comment section, but Mailloux is kind of the superior offensive option at this point. But at the same time, they sent Barron down for one thing, and that's, well, I guess maybe multiple things, but to work on his defense and to work a bit on his confidence. And if he's still not confident, it might be time for Mailloux. As much as people say, like, and I tend to agree that you bring up the guy who's already earned his NHL spot, the guy who already has 6 goals this year with the Habs, it just makes sense. But after calling up Joshua Roy, like, if there's a need there for a defenseman, it feels like the Habs are maybe more leaning towards just give these guys a shot. Does it mean they're going to play the rest of the season with him? No, but Jesse, I don't know. I feel like Barron is still the smart play, and I think it's the thing the Habs are going to do, but I got this sneaking suspicion that they're kind of leaning in the direction of, like, you know what? Let's just try it. Like, what do we have to lose?
And that's what's kind of unfortunate about these injuries once again, is because Xhekaj was able to benefit so much from his time in Laval. And you could very much think if Justin Barron was able to really get that time in, that this could really benefit him as well, right? You got to feel like when we're bringing him to Laval, we want to give him a good stint and then kind of bring him up when he's ready. Hopefully not have to bring him, back down there again, at least for the foreseeable future, right? But, with situations as they are, right, we have to think about Logan Mailloux's development and really not rushing him too much. He's doing so good, but we almost want to take a little bit of time. There's definitely a huge difference just in terms of physicality, NHL readiness between being 22 years of age and 20. It's the hardest position, for a young player in the NHL. So the more time you can kind of give them, the more runway, all the better. So, looking forward to see if maybe Justin Barron can really surprise us coming back up again.
I hope so. Well, hopefully Harris and Guhle are back sooner than we expect, and we can avoid most of this mess, but you never know. Who do you guys think is going to get called up? Let us know down below. Is it time for Mailloux? We'd love to hear from you. But let's move on to the second topic of the video, and we got to talk a bit about Jake Allen. And oh my gosh, against his former team, he put up his worst performance of the season, arguably his worst in a Habs uniform. That's arguable, I suppose. He's had a couple, not that many though. I mean, Allen's a very solid goaltender, don't get us wrong. But after his recent performance against St. Louis, it kind of has a lot of fans and even some media members that we're going to get into in a bit of a frenzy, wondering, what do we do with him? Does he even have trade value anymore? I'm seeing talks, at least on Twitter, on Reddit, of people saying we should buy him out, we should waive him, just get him off the team. We're ruining Cayden Primeau's development. And Bossou and Gaudin, on their recent Bossou and Gaudin notebook, they spoke a bit about this. And Gaudin said, I don't think he has any trade value left. Bossou, of course, one of the top Habs insiders, said, well, I think there is value, but he thinks Kent Hughes is just holding out, Jesse, for a team to give him the price he wants in terms of retention. He believes at this point it's not about Jake Allen necessarily the player, like the value you'd get for him. It's more so the value you'd get with respect to how much you'd have to retain his salary. So it seems like there is still a market for Jake Allen. Before we get into some of the rumors they talked about who could maybe be a good suitor, like I maybe teased in the intro, what are your thoughts on Allen? Are you sick of this 3 goalie carousel? It feels like now more than ever, something has to be done.
Yeah, I think that they do really need to trade Jake Allen just to really bring out the best in Samuel Montembeault. We gave him this long-term deal. If we're giving him this long-term deal, we really need to nurture him. He's getting his starts, but just a little bit more consistency still. And as well, just for Cayden Primeau, I would argue it's really important to get his development right. And so I think that it would be the best to trade Jake Allen, but there's even people like David Pagnotta coming out from, TSN 690 saying that from what he adds just in terms of the culture of the team, that he's really worth kind of keeping for so many reasons in terms of having a Stanley Cup, showing people that he's won in the past. But I really think with this young team for the development of our young goalies, we do need to trade. I think that's why we've kept one of our retention spots open. I think if we can get a 3rd or a 4th round pick, I think that's a trade we need to do. And even though, yesterday wasn't the best game, make no mistake about it, Jake Allen still has value in the NHL. He would be a valuable addition to many teams that are still in the hunt, that are, I would say, more looking for a backup. For sure, there's lots of starters. There's Markstrom, there's Merzlikis out in the market, but not the backup that I feel a lot of contending teams really need, So I feel like, sooner than later, we do need to make this move, and I'm expecting that to happen before this trade deadline.
Yeah, I think so too. And now I think a lot of people are overreacting as well to one game. Like, Jake Allen's a known commodity. Like, yeah, he's been on a bit of a decline since about November. He's only had about an .886 save percentage since November, though his goals saved above expected. The advanced stats are still fairly solid since then, so give him that. But teams know what he is. Like, him giving up 7 goals in a game is not going to change GM's idea of what Jake Allen brings to the team. All it'll do is give him maybe a leg up on negotiations with Kent Hughes, Like, that's about all it's going to do. It's like, oh, well, look at what he did there. Yeah, that's it. But one team they mentioned, Jesse, and I want to talk about this briefly before we move on to our amazing Slav stuff, is the Philadelphia Flyers. And Godin kind of brought up, like, well, what if you trade Jake Allen for Cal Peterson 1-for-1? Peterson's on a brutal contract as well, $5 million this year, and I believe next, saying, like, you overpay for him to play in Laval, you get a sort of a veteran goalie in Laval, and you maybe can get an asset out of it as well for trading Jake Allen's contract. I don't think that's a good idea. I don't see why they would do that. I don't think Laval has the budget for that, and Basu kind of agreed with that. At the end of the day, why would you trade 2 years of Allen for some years of Peterson, who has a worse contract, just to stick him in Laval, where you have guys like Jakub Dobeš trying to, make their way, and you never know, like, is Fowler going to stay in the NCAA, or is he, right? There's a lot of question marks. I don't know. What are your thoughts on this Jake Allen to the Flyers take, where they think at least you can maybe scrounge something out of him?
We didn't already have somewhat of a vet goalie in the AHL to kind of insulate Jakub Dobeš, I would say absolutely by all means, because that was important for the Montreal Canadiens to address earlier. Jakub Dobeš, new to the AHL, definitely needing some reinforcements there. If we didn't have that, there would be a vacancy. But I think with what we have kind of in-house, even though we'd be burying that contract in the AHL, just that type of term, that type of contract definitely scares me. And I think it would for Kent Hughes too, when we're just really, the name of the game is just creating that financial flexibility of really getting numbers off of the books rather than taking them on, even if it would be in the AHL, because as we know, things can happen. There could be a situation where we need to call up that player, right? So I don't think we would want to necessarily put ourselves in a precarious situation if anything would come to happen. Let's say we're trading Allen and we do need to recall somebody there. So for me, it's, I definitely think you need to stand pat on that.
Yeah, I agree. Casimir Casco, I tried it. I gave myself one shot. Casco, whatever. Casco, yeah, it's fine. He's amazing. Shout out to his YouTube channel. But yeah, I agree. I think it's a bad idea, but you never know. Maybe we'll get something for Jake Allen. Hey, if you get a 3rd or a 4th with retention at this point, that's fine by us. But let's move on to our final thing, and that's Slafkovsky. And my goodness, I feel like we could talk about him all day, every day. And you know what? I kind of already do. But there's some great stuff. Big Head Hockey tweeted this out, and just take a look at this. I mean, look at this elite company. every winger with 35 plus hits and 16 plus points in the last 2 months. So basically, not that cherry picked either. It's like, well, sort of, I guess you pick those numbers. But at the same time, these are the 4 forwards or 4 wingers who are hitting the most and scoring the most. And who isn't? Well, it's Andrei Svechnikov, Brady Tkachuk, Filip Forsberg, Juraj Slafkovsky. Yeah, cherry picked. It sort of is, whatever. But it's still really awesome that it's just those elite players in Slav. He's proven he can lay the body and score. But the scoring is maybe the most surprising development of this. We knew it would come eventually, but we didn't know how fast. Well, let's check out his progression compared to another 6'4" winger, 6'4", 200+ pound winger, and that is Mikko Rantanen. The Habitants tweeted out, they said objects in mirror may be closer than they appear. They did a little graph. It's game number versus cumulative points in their career for Juraj Slafkovsky and Mikko Rantanen. I'll pop that up, make it a bit bigger for you guys. Just take a look at that green trend line. Catching up to draft year +2 Mikko Rantanen. And don't forget, in Mikko Rantanen's draft +3 year, he was a point-per-game player. So Juraj Slafkovsky's trend is very similar to another guy of similar size who came over to the NHL at that time. Remember, Rantanen also played in the AHL when he was, for the first year and a bit after he was drafted. This is not unprecedented from Slav, but it's insanely impressive to me. But I think, again, what the most impressive thing is this jump in talent level. The fact he's learning so fast makes me feel his ceiling is higher than we could have ever imagined. It feels like every day he maybe makes a mistake, he learns from it. The coaching staff tells him something, he does it better. He said, well, after that Dallas game where he scored, he's like, well, what? I only pass, right? So maybe getting in other people's heads after finally scoring a goal and then making one of the sickest saucer passes of the season to Suzuki. It's like, I feel like his ceiling is getting to a point where I can't even understand it. Like, this guy, I truly feel is going to be the next point per game Habs player, if it's not Suzuki.
Absolutely. Well, that's just it. That's what we're asking now, seeing the progression. Like, what is his Slav ceiling? What is he going to turn into? What type of player, right? And we're here to say today, Slav is his ceiling is that of a top 10 player in the NHL. That's how good he can potentially become. And as we see right now, he's following that trajectory of Mikko Rantanen, who surprisingly is 8th in the league in point production, following a very similar path. If he continues this, he's going to be right there in that sort of conversation. Of course, there's now a lot of work still to be done to continue this, but the numbers just prove to show. And if we watch that graph, he's really kind of gaining on Rantanen, every single day now, so it's really amazing to see this type of progression, obviously with a player that has a lot of those same kind of traits that he does as well. And there's probably some interesting takeaways to note as well, is that if Slav is continuing this development that he's doing right now for the end of the year, expect, just as Rantanen had that big jump in his draft +3 year, for Slav to do the exact same thing, right? So very interesting to notice a lot of the same kind of development paths coming from Europe as well. A big guy kind of taking some time to grow in that body, but then once you do, the points just kind of start coming in left, right, and center. So, I mean, amazing to kind of study some of these numbers here.
Yeah, and just for reference, like Slav this season, 10 goals, 14 assists for 24 points in 52 games. That's a 36.5 point pace over 79 games, which is what Rantanen played in his draft +2 year. And in Rantanen's draft +2 year, he had 20 goals, 18 assists. So Slav's playmaking numbers are much better than Rantanen, Rantanen's a 30-goal scorer who's maybe even a better playmaker at this point. So it's like, these numbers are like fairly comparable, and over the course of the season, Slav very well has the means to match, if not exceed, Rantanen's D+2 point production. And they play us not a totally similar game, but you can see the similarities. So it's really, really amazing to see this, and we'd love to hear from you. What do you think about this? Do you think there are comparables between Rantanen and Slav? It sure seems like there are, and with the way Slav is learning, the way he's progressing every single day, I feel like we said, his Slav ceiling, is that what you called it, is way higher than we could have ever expected. Exactly that. Okay, well, we'll call it there before we start losing. Well, that'll do it for this episode of Habs Digest. If you enjoyed, leave a like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Help us reach 11,000 subs. We're getting really, really close, and if you guys could just hit that button if you haven't already, we'd really appreciate it. I'm Josh Gosse, my co-host Jesse Poirier. We'll catch you in the next one.